Are you truly alive, or are you just breathing? It's easy to mistake existence for living. You wake up every day, perform the same routines, work, socialize, watch TV, and then sleep, only to repeat it all again tomorrow. But is that really living, or is it just existing on autopilot? Ask yourself this: if today were your last day, would you spend it exactly as you've planned? Would you be satisfied knowing that your life ended precisely in the middle of your usual routines? Or would you feel a pang of regret, realizing that you never truly took the chance to live deliberately, to take risks, to embrace opportunities, or to chase dreams that genuinely matter to you? The reality is that most people today spend their entire lives running on autopilot. Existential autopilot is a silent, pervasive state of living passively, where decisions aren't made consciously, but rather as automatic responses to external expectations or ingrained habits. You move through life without ever pausing to question why you're doing what you're doing. You choose a career because it's practical, stay in relationships out of comfort, or maintain friendships out of habit rather than genuine connection. The troubling consequence of living this way is not just monotony, but a subtle erosion of your identity, creativity, and happiness. Days, weeks, even years blend together into an indistinguishable blur, leaving you to wonder, where did the time go? How did I end up here? Existential autopilot isn't always obvious because it often feels comfortable. It gives you the illusion of safety, a predictable pattern that seemingly protects you from life's uncertainty and chaos. But beneath this superficial comfort lies a deeper anxiety, the haunting sense that life could be more meaningful, more fulfilling, more vibrant. It's an anxiety philosophers describe as existential dread, a powerful awareness of life's brevity and fragility that hits you during moments of quiet reflection. Instead of running from this dread, existential philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Albert Camus believed in confronting it head-on. They argued that acknowledging life's fleeting nature doesn't have to paralyze you. Rather, it can liberate you, pushing you to live intentionally and authentically. We're going to break down exactly how to snap out of existential autopilot and begin living a conscious, intentional life. We'll explore profound existential insights and practical tools drawn from some of history's most influential thinkers, providing you with the clarity and courage you need to step out of your comfort zone and reclaim your life. By the end, you'll understand not just why it's crucial to wake up from autopilot, but precisely how to do it. It's time to stop merely breathing and start truly living. We've all felt it, that strange sensation of time slipping by, days blending into weeks, weeks into months, until suddenly you're looking back, wondering where it all went. You get up in the morning, check your phone, brush your teeth, rush through breakfast, go to work, come home, maybe distract yourself with a bit of entertainment, then sleep, and repeat. At first, this pattern seems harmless. It's just life, right? But over time, something unsettling starts to grow in the background. A dull emptiness, a quiet voice asking, "Is this all there is?" That's the crisis of living on autopilot. So what exactly does living on autopilot mean? On the surface, it's a life ruled by routine. It's when you move through your day without conscious thought or deliberate choice, driven more by habit, external expectations, and societal scripts than by your own values or desires. You're not making decisions because you deeply want something, but because that's what you're supposed to do. You study what's practical, not what excites you. You work a job because it pays the bills, not because it fulfills you. You spend time with people out of obligation, not connection. You scroll endlessly on your phone, not because it brings joy, but because it fills the silence. Autopilot living doesn't necessarily mean you're lazy or unproductive. You might be incredibly busy, your calendar could be packed, you could be constantly doing, but not really being. That's the core of it. You're active, but not awake. There's no presence, no intentionality, no genuine engagement with your own life. You're moving, but not going anywhere that matters to you. And this kind of living comes at a high cost. Over time, the psychological toll becomes hard to ignore. There's a creeping sense of dissatisfaction, like something's missing, even if you can't quite name what. Anxiety builds, not always as a loud panic, but as a low, constant hum. It's the discomfort of being misaligned with yourself. It's the tension of living a life that looks fine on the outside, but feels hollow on the inside. The longer you stay in autopilot, the harder it becomes to remember who you really are beneath the layers of routine. You start questioning your purpose, your identity, and the meaning of everything you do. Regret begins to whisper, especially in moments of stillness, when the noise fades and you're left alone with your thoughts. People often describe this feeling as a midlife crisis, but the truth is, it's not about age, it's about awareness. That crisis can hit anyone, at any time, once they realize they've been asleep at the wheel. It's the moment you wake up in a life you don't recognize, built on choices you never consciously made. This is where existentialism steps in, not as a gloomy philosophy, but as a radical wake-up call. Existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Martin Heidegger, and Albert Camus believe that the core of human existence lies in our freedom. Not just political freedom or freedom of movement, but a deeper, scarier kind, the freedom to choose what your life means. According to Sartre, existence precedes essence. This means you are not born with a predefined purpose or identity. You exist first, and then it's up to you to define who you are through your actions and choices. In other words, you're not a passenger, you're the one driving. But most people don't want that responsibility. It's terrifying. So instead, they hide in routines, social roles, distractions, anything to avoid confronting the raw freedom of shaping their own life. Martin Heidegger described this condition as falling into the they self, where you become just another member of the crowd, doing what they do, thinking what they think. You stop being yourself and start being a vague echo of the world around you. You exist, but not authentically. And this inauthentic existence leads to what Heidegger called inauthentic Dasein, a state of being where you're disconnected from your own potential. You're not choosing your path, you're drifting along one that's already been paved. Albert Camus, on the other hand, approached this crisis through the lens of absurdity. He saw the human condition as inherently absurd. We search for meaning in a universe that offers none by default. That realization, he argued, doesn't have to lead to despair. In fact, it can be the beginning of freedom. When you accept that life has no inherent meaning, you're no longer bound by false expectations or imposed purposes. You're free to create meaning for yourself. Camus famously wrote, "The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion." In other words, living intentionally, on your own terms, is a form of resistance against the emptiness of autopilot living. The key point here is this: existentialism doesn't tell you what to do with your life. It doesn't hand you a checklist for happiness or a formula for success. Instead, it demands that you decide, that you confront the uncomfortable question, what do I want my life to mean? It challenges you to stop drifting, to take the wheel, and to start choosing deliberately, even if that choice is difficult, unconventional, or risky. But most of us don't start there. We often begin in the crisis. It's the numbness, the anxiety, the regret that forces us to pause. It's the sense that something's off, that we've lost touch with our inner compass. And that's okay. Sometimes it takes discomfort to push us into awareness. Sometimes the breakdown is the beginning of the breakthrough. So if you're feeling stuck, empty, or detached, know this: that feeling is not the end. It's a sign that you're waking up. It's the first crack in the shell of routine, and through that crack, something new can emerge. A life built with awareness, courage, and meaning. You don't have to keep living on autopilot. You don't have to keep saying yes to a life you never consciously chose. Existentialism reminds us that we always have a choice, even if the world tells us otherwise. Existentialism is often misunderstood. People hear the word and assume it's just another complicated, depressing philosophy, something reserved for university classrooms or melancholic intellectuals brooding in cafes. But at its core, existentialism is surprisingly simple and powerful. It begins with a basic truth. Life doesn't come with built-in meaning. There is no universal instruction manual for how to live. No cosmic blueprint laying out your purpose. You're born, you exist, and what you do with that existence is entirely up to you. That freedom is the foundation of existentialist thought. But it's also what makes it so uncomfortable. Because if there's no script, then you are the author. If there's no preordained meaning, then you must create your own. And that means everything. Your happiness, your values, your identity is ultimately your responsibility. Jean-Paul Sartre, one of the most prominent voices in existential philosophy, put it bluntly: man is condemned to be free. At first glance, that sounds contradictory. Isn't freedom a good thing? Isn't it something we fight for? But Sartre wasn't talking about political or social freedom. He meant something deeper, the existential reality that we are free whether we like it or not. We are condemned to freedom because there is no way to escape it. Even doing nothing, even refusing to choose, is itself a choice. You can't opt out of responsibility for your life. You can only delay it, and usually at the cost of your peace, your authenticity, and your potential. What Sartre is really pointing to is the burden of freedom. Because if you are truly free, then you can't blame anyone or anything else for the direction of your life. You can't say, "It's just how I was raised," or "That's what society expects," or "I had no other option." Those things might influence you, yes, but they don't define you. You always retain the ability to choose, even if the choices are hard. And that realization can be terrifying. Most people don't want that kind of responsibility. It's far easier to follow a pre-made path, to let others decide what's valuable, to just do what everyone else is doing and hope it turns out okay. But existentialism rips that illusion away. It demands that you wake up and start choosing deliberately and courageously. This kind of thinking isn't just philosophical, it's deeply practical. Think about how often we give up our agency without realizing it. We take jobs we hate because we believe we have no choice. We stay in toxic relationships because starting over feels too hard. We suppress dreams and passions because they don't seem realistic. And every time we do that, we give up a little more of ourselves. Existentialism calls that out. It forces us to see how often we surrender our freedom in exchange for comfort or certainty. And it reminds us that those comforts come with a cost, the slow erosion of our sense of self. But here's where existentialism becomes empowering. That same realization that no one is coming to save you, that there's no guidebook, also means you are completely free to rewrite your story. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to follow anyone else's definition of success. You can wake up tomorrow and choose differently. You can realign your actions with your values. You can stop sleepwalking and start showing up as the person you actually want to be. That kind of freedom is rare, and it's easy to overlook in a world obsessed with formulas and quick fixes. But existentialism reminds you that the only real transformation comes from within, and it starts the moment you take full ownership of your life. This is where the concept of existential anxiety comes in, a core part of existential thought that's often misunderstood. Most of us try to avoid anxiety at all costs. We see it as a flaw, a weakness, something to fix or medicate away. But existentialists see anxiety differently. They see it as a signal, an internal alarm that something deeper is happening. Existential anxiety shows up when we realize the weight of our freedom, when we recognize that the life we're living doesn't reflect who we really are, when we feel the discomfort of being untrue to ourselves. This anxiety isn't there to destroy us, it's there to wake us up. It's the friction between who you are and who you could be. And if you learn to listen to it, it can be the beginning of something extraordinary. Instead of running from existential anxiety, we can lean into it. We can let it push us to ask better questions. Am I living in alignment with my values? Am I showing up for my life with intention? Am I making choices that matter, or just reacting out of fear or habit? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're the ones that lead to real change. Because when you start asking them honestly, you begin to see the ways in which you've been hiding from yourself. And in that awareness lies your opportunity to grow. Sartre's philosophy isn't meant to shame you or make you feel guilty about your life so far. It's an invitation, a bold, unapologetic invitation to start living on purpose, to stop blaming the past or the world or bad luck. To realize that no matter where you are or how lost you feel, you can start taking responsibility right now. You can choose your values, you can choose your relationships, you can choose your habits, your focus, your beliefs, and through those choices you create meaning. That's existentialism in action. It's not abstract, it's not theoretical, it's deeply human and intensely real. The philosophers we're talking about, Sartre, Camus, Heidegger, they weren't just talking about ideas. They were trying to answer the same questions we all wrestle with. Why am I here? What do I do with my life? How do I live in a way that matters? Their answers weren't always easy, and they weren't always optimistic. But they were honest. They looked directly at the raw, uncomfortable reality of being human, and they offered a path through it. A path built not on fantasy or hope, but on courage, choice, and authenticity. When you see a photo of Sartre standing in post-war Paris, cigarette in hand, eyes burning with intellectual fire, what you're really seeing is a man who dared to say, "You are responsible for your life, no one else." When you read Camus writing about the absurd, about finding joy in a meaningless universe, you're seeing a man who believed that even in the face of despair, rebellion was possible. That even if life is fleeting and fragile, it can still be lived beautifully, if we choose to live it that way. These ideas aren't just for the history books. They're for you, here and now. You don't have to be a philosopher to live with intention. You just have to decide that your life is worth showing up for. That your freedom, while terrifying, is also sacred. That your anxiety isn't a curse, it's a compass. And that no one can live your life but you. Visualize it. A person standing alone in a vast open space, the world stretching out in every direction. There's no map, no guide, just the horizon, the unknown, and the responsibility to take a step. That's what Sartre meant. That's what existentialism is. You are here, you are alive, and what you do with that is entirely up to you. There's a kind of quiet suffering that doesn't scream. It doesn't look like rock bottom, and it doesn't come with dramatic breakdowns. It's a subtle, creeping numbness, a sense that something is off, even if you can't quite explain what. You're functioning, You're doing the things you're supposed to be doing, but deep down it feels like you're not really there. This is one of the clearest signs that you're living on autopilot. Life moves around you and through you, but you're not fully awake inside it. Conversations feel shallow, days feel repetitive, and you catch yourself going through the motions without feeling genuinely connected to what you're doing. You smile, you nod, you participate, but something essential is missing. And the scariest part, you start to get used to it. Think about how often you find yourself forgetting what you just did. You walk into a room and forget why. You finish eating and don't even remember the taste of your food. You drive somewhere and arrive with no memory of the journey. These aren't just signs of distraction, they're signs of disconnection. You're there physically, but mentally and emotionally you're somewhere else. And that somewhere else is often a place of escape, not engagement. This detachment becomes your default, and slowly it spreads to everything. You stop noticing the color of the sky, the sound of your own laughter, the way your body feels when you stretch or breathe deeply. You lose touch with the richness of the present moment and life becomes a blur. Another powerful indicator that you're on autopilot is the way you treat your dreams, the things you've always wanted to do, the life you've imagined for yourself. When you're stuck in passive mode, those dreams get pushed aside. You tell yourself you'll get to them someday. You postpone the trip you always wanted to take. You delay working on that project that excites you. You wait for the perfect moment to make a change, one that never comes. Maybe you wanted to start a creative hobby, switch careers, move to a new city, start a business, learn a new language. Whatever it is, it lingers in the background like a ghost. And every time you ignore it, a piece of you fades just a little more. And over time, this becomes the norm, constantly putting off what really matters while convincing yourself you're just too busy or not ready yet. We often mask this with distractions. The easiest way to avoid our own thoughts is to drown them in noise. So we scroll and scroll and scroll. Social media becomes not just a habit, but an anesthetic. You pick up your phone without even thinking. You open one app, then another, 10 minutes pass, then 30, then an hour. And when you finally look up, you feel emptier than when you started. You didn't rest, you didn't connect, you didn't grow, you just escaped. Streaming platforms, mindless videos, endless content, it all offers a quick fix for discomfort, but it leaves you hollow. You're not consuming it because you love it. You're consuming it because it's easier than facing your own silence. But that silence is where your truth lives. Sometimes autopilot shows up as emotional numbness. You stop feeling joy the way you used to. The things that once excited you barely move the needle now. You laugh less, not because there's nothing funny, but because it takes more to pierce through the fog you're in. Even sadness can start to feel muted. It's not dramatic despair, just a low-grade discontent, like a gray filter over everything. You might tell yourself you're just tired, or that it's normal to feel this way, but deep down, you know this isn't how you're meant to live. You were meant to feel fully, to experience the highs and lows of life in their full spectrum. When that range collapses into monotony, something inside you begins to wilt. Pay attention to how you speak to yourself. Do you constantly rationalize your choices with phrases like, "It's not that bad," or "At least I have a job," or "Everyone else is doing the same thing"? These are coping mechanisms, ways to justify a life that no longer fits you. They're mental autopilot statements, scripts that keep you small, compliant, and comfortable. And they're dangerous, not because they're false, but because they're half true. They contain just enough truth to keep you stuck. But the other half, the part you're not admitting, is that you want more. You crave purpose, you crave depth, you crave freedom, and no amount of justification can silence that craving forever. Look at how you use your time. Are your days filled with intentional actions or just endless tasks that drain you? Do you end your day feeling fulfilled or just relieved that it's over? Are you creating something or just consuming what others have created? Do you spend more time reacting than initiating? Autopilot thrives on reactivity. You wake up and immediately check notifications. You respond to emails. You go to work and do what's asked. You come home and collapse into whatever media is most convenient. You follow a pattern that was handed to you, not one you designed. And even when you have a free moment, you don't use it to reflect or realign. You use it to escape. This isn't laziness, it's inertia. And the only way to break inertia is to recognize it. Ask yourself some hard questions and be brutally honest with your answers. When was the last time you felt truly alive? When was the last time you took a risk for something that mattered to you? When was the last time you said no to what was easy and yes to what was meaningful? Are you proud of how you're spending your days? Do your actions reflect your deepest values, or are they just keeping you afloat? What are you avoiding by staying busy? Who would you be if no one was watching, if you weren't trying to meet anyone's expectations? What would your life look like if you were living it on purpose? These questions can be uncomfortable. They're meant to be. They peel back the layers of distraction and busyness and show you what's underneath. They bring you face to face with your truth, not your public persona, not your survival mode, but your raw, unfiltered self. And that confrontation, while scary, is the first step toward change, because you can't fix what you won't face, and you won't face what you keep numbing. You might be thinking, I don't know how to live differently. That's okay, you don't need to have all the answers yet. What matters is that you start paying attention, that you stop pretending everything's fine when it isn't, that you get curious about your own life again. Awareness is the beginning of transformation, and once you see the patterns, you can start breaking them. You can take back control, one conscious choice at a time. You can begin to trade numbness for presence, routine for intention, and passive living for purposeful creation. The question is, are you willing to wake up? Most people live as if they have all the time in the world. We make plans for someday. We say we'll chase our dreams when we're more stable, more confident, more prepared. We delay hard conversations, meaningful adventures, and bold decisions because we believe tomorrow will be waiting for us. But death has a way of reminding us that tomorrow is never promised, that our time is not infinite, that life is not a rehearsal, and yet we carry on as if we're immortal. We avoid thinking about death because it makes us uncomfortable, but the truth is, remembering that we will die is one of the most powerful tools we have to truly start living. The Stoics had a phrase for this: memento mori, remember that you must die. It wasn't meant to scare or depress people. It was a call to wake up, a reminder to live each day fully because each day could be your last. Seneca, one of the most practical of the Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively about this. He warned us not to waste time because it's the one thing we can never get back. You can earn more money, meet new people, gain new experiences, but once time has passed, it's gone forever. And the problem isn't that life is too short, Seneca argued. It's that we waste so much of it. We spend hours chasing things that don't matter, worrying about things we can't control, and ignoring the things that actually give life depth and meaning. Seneca wasn't just writing for philosophers or kings, he was writing for everyone, for anyone who's ever let years slip by in a haze of busyness and distraction. He said, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." Meaning we're terrified of the wrong things. We fear discomfort, failure, embarrassment while living as if death doesn't exist. But it does. And if you let that reality sink in, not in a morbid way, but in a focused, intentional way, it can completely transform how you live your life. Imagine waking up every day with the clear awareness that this might be your last. Would you waste your energy on petty arguments? Would you spend hours mindlessly scrolling on your phone? Would you put off that dream one more year? Or would you show up with urgency, with presence, with gratitude? Martin Heidegger, one of the central figures in existential philosophy, also believed that the awareness of death is essential to authentic living. He introduced the idea of being toward death, the concept that the only way to live authentically is to live with full awareness of our mortality. Most of us try to avoid this awareness. We distract ourselves with routines, with entertainment, with endless planning for the future. Heidegger called this inauthenticity, when we live as if we're just part of the crowd, detached from the raw reality of our own existence. But when we confront death, when we truly absorb the fact that we are finite beings, something changes. We begin to ask different questions. We begin to seek real answers. We stop postponing what matters and start acting from a place of truth. Being toward death is not about giving up or becoming morbid. It's about waking up. It's about living each moment with the understanding that it's fragile and irreplaceable. When you live with death in mind, you're more likely to speak honestly, to act with courage, to love more deeply, and to stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You stop pretending and you start becoming. Death awareness doesn't shrink your life, it sharpens it. It puts everything into focus. So let me ask you something directly. If you had 1 year left to live, how differently would you live it? If you knew, with certainty, that 365 days from now your time would be up, what would change? Would you still be doing the same job? Spending time with the same people? Living in the same place? Would you still be putting off the things you've been meaning to do for years? Would you still be afraid to take that risk, to start that project, to say how you really feel? Be honest with yourself, really sit with the question, because the uncomfortable truth is, that scenario isn't just hypothetical. You don't know how much time you have. None of us do. Most people don't start living until they get a wake-up call, until they lose someone they love, or face a diagnosis, or have a brush with death themselves. Only then does it hit them how short this ride really is, how quickly it can all be taken away, how much time they've already let slip by. But you don't need to wait for tragedy to wake you up. You can let philosophy do that for you. That's the gift of memento mori. It's a reminder baked into your daily life. This is it. This is your life. Don't sleep through it. You don't need to panic. You don't need to drop everything and move to a different continent. But you do need to start acting like your time matters, because it does. Every day you wake up is a day you'll never get back. Every conversation could be your last with that person. Every opportunity you ignore may never come again. And every moment you spend inauthentically trying to please others, following someone else's script, is a moment you steal from the life that could have been yours. Start small if you have to. Start by paying attention. Watch how you spend your time. Notice where you go numb. Ask yourself why you're avoiding certain choices. Be honest about the things you've been postponing for years. Call the people you've lost touch with. Tell the truth even if your voice shakes. Stop saying someday and start saying now. Living with death in mind is not about fear, it's about clarity. It's about living so fully, so courageously, that when your time comes, you can meet it without regret. The Stoics believe that death should be like a friend, always nearby, always reminding us to live with urgency and purpose. Camus echoed that in his own way. He said we must imagine Sisyphus happy, even as he pushed the boulder endlessly uphill. Why? Because even in a world without guaranteed meaning, we can still choose to live beautifully, defiantly, truthfully. And that's what this is really about. Death is not the end of the conversation, it's the beginning. It's the ultimate mirror. It reflects back the life you're living and asks, is this the life you want? If not, don't wait, change it. You owe it to yourself to stop living on autopilot. You owe it to yourself to live a life so real, so present, so intentional, that when your final day comes, you'll be able to look back and say, I didn't waste it. There's a strange kind of safety in doing what everyone else is doing. If you follow the rules, stick to the plan, blend in with the group, and never ask too many questions, life tends to go more smoothly, at least on the surface. You're less likely to be judged. You won't stand out too much. You won't ruffle feathers or make anyone uncomfortable. You'll be accepted, praised even. But beneath that comfort often lies a quiet kind of despair, a feeling that you've traded your real self for a mask, that you're living a life designed by someone else, your parents, your peers, your culture, your social media feed. This is the crisis of conformity, when your outer life might look fine to everyone else, but your inner life is starving. Søren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher and theologian, was one of the earliest thinkers to warn against this. He believed that the greatest danger to the individual wasn't failure or suffering. It was losing yourself in the crowd. He wrote that the crowd is untruth, meaning that when you start living based on what the collective expects from you, what's fashionable, what's proper, what's normal, you begin to abandon your own responsibility to become a true self. You outsource your decisions. You let public opinion take the wheel. And the terrifying thing is, you might not even notice it. Because the crowd doesn't demand that you betray yourself all at once. It's subtle. It happens in small, quiet compromises. You take the safe job instead of the one that excites you. You hold back your real opinions so you won't offend anyone. You wear clothes you don't even like. Repeat phrases you don't believe. Live a life that doesn't quite fit, but it feels easier than being different. Kierkegaard saw this as a spiritual sickness, not because it had anything to do with religion, but because it dulled the soul. It made people forget that they were unique, that they had a personal relationship with life, and that no one else could live their life for them. He believed that to truly be yourself, you have to stand alone at some point. You have to confront the anxiety that comes with not belonging, the discomfort of being misunderstood, and the responsibility of making your own choices. That kind of authenticity doesn't come cheaply. It costs you comfort, approval, and sometimes relationships. But in return, it gives you something far more valuable: your selfhood, your integrity, your inner peace. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher and provocateur, took this idea even further. He believed that most people live as herd animals, just going along with the crowd, obeying without thinking, and living by values they've inherited but never examined. For Nietzsche, the highest goal wasn't happiness or safety, it was becoming who you truly are. He called this the path of the Übermensch, not a superior race or superhuman, as it's often misunderstood, but an ideal individual who creates their own values and lives according to their own inner law. This isn't about selfishness, it's about self-creation. It's about breaking free from the programming of society and becoming the author of your own life. Nietzsche warned that blindly following morality, customs, or religion without questioning them turns people into shadows of themselves. They don't live, they obey, and in doing so, they miss the entire point of being human, the ability to choose, to question, to grow, and to create meaning from within. He admired those rare individuals who had the courage to break the mold, who chose truth over comfort, and who were willing to suffer in order to live honestly. Because for Nietzsche, suffering was not the enemy, it was the crucible where the self is forged. He said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. When you live authentically, you suffer for the right reasons." not because you're lost or pretending, but because you're building something real. Living authentically then is not about being different just for the sake of it. It's not about rebellion or aesthetic or identity politics. It's about alignment. It's about getting brutally honest with yourself. What do I believe? What do I value? What kind of life do I actually want to live? And then living in accordance with those answers, even if the world doesn't approve. Authenticity isn't a single moment of clarity, it's a lifelong process. You have to keep choosing it over and over again in big decisions and small ones. You have to catch yourself when you start falling back into habits that aren't yours. You have to question the narratives you've inherited about success, about relationships, about what it means to be normal. The world will constantly try to pull you back into conformity. It will reward you for staying in line, for doing what's expected, for chasing what everyone else is chasing. But here's the truth. The life you're meant to live doesn't exist in the script that's been handed to you. It has to be written from scratch. And writing it is messy, uncomfortable, and often lonely. But the reward is freedom. Not the kind of freedom that comes from breaking rules for fun, but the deeper kind that comes from knowing you're not faking it anymore. That you're not performing. That you've stopped living for applause and started living from your core. Choosing authenticity over conformity is a radical act in today's world. It means you might make less money. It means some people won't understand you. It means you'll have to make hard choices that go against the grain. But the trade-off is that you get to live a life that actually feels like yours. You get to wake up in the morning and not feel like an imposter in your own skin. You get to look in the mirror and see someone who's flawed, yes, but real, alive, awake. Ask yourself how much of your life is truly yours. How many of your opinions are your own? How many of your choices were made because you deeply wanted them, not because they were expected of you? Are you living for approval or for truth? Are you following a path because it feels right or because it feels familiar? These aren't easy questions, but they're necessary if you want to break free from the invisible grip of conformity. Don't wait for permission to be yourself. Don't wait for the world to be ready for who you are. Kierkegaard and Nietzsche didn't write for the masses. They wrote for individuals who were ready to think for themselves, for people brave enough to walk their own path, even when that path is hard, uncertain, and lonely. But remember this, authenticity might be uncomfortable, but it's never empty. Because at the end of the day, you can fool the world, but you can't fool yourself. You know when you're living in alignment, and you know when you're not. So if there's a voice inside you that's been trying to speak, listen. If there's a version of you that you've buried to fit in, dig it up. If you've been playing a role for so long that you forgot who you were before the act began, go find that person again. Not for the world, for you. Because your life, your one and only life, deserves to be lived fully, honestly, and unapologetically. And no amount of approval will ever replace the quiet peace of knowing you stayed true to yourself. There's a common belief that happiness comes from comfort, ease, and the absence of struggle. We're told that if we can just eliminate stress, avoid conflict, and reach some peaceful, pain-free plateau, then we'll finally be happy. But real life rarely works that way. And more importantly, this idea is fundamentally flawed. It's not comfort that gives our lives meaning. It's not passive peace that fills us with purpose. It's struggle, purposeful, chosen, meaningful struggle. When you look back at the most important chapters of your life, the ones that shaped you, defined you, and taught you the most, you'll notice something. They weren't the easy ones. They were the ones you had to fight through. the ones that tested you, stretched you, forced you to grow. And that's what Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, and Holocaust survivor, understood better than almost anyone. Frankl's philosophy, called logotherapy, was built on a very simple but powerful idea. The primary motivation in life is not pleasure, as Freud claimed, but meaning. He argued that human beings can endure almost anything, suffering, hardship, loss, if they believe that it matters. Frankl survived Auschwitz, one of the most horrific environments imaginable, and still came out with the belief that life can be meaningful even in the most desperate conditions. He observed that those who survived the camps weren't always the physically strongest, but often those who had something to live for. A person, a goal, a vision of the future. How do you know which struggles are meaningful and which ones are just pointless suffering? How do you distinguish between pain that's part of your growth and pain that's just keeping you stuck? The difference lies in purpose. A meaningful struggle is one that brings you closer to something you truly value. It's the hard work of building something that matters to you. It's the discomfort of pursuing your potential, even when it's terrifying. It's the emotional labor of healing from trauma, being honest in your relationships, or confronting your own limitations. These things are not easy, but they're worth it. They move you forward. They expand your life. On the other hand, meaningless struggle is what happens when you're stuck in cycles that go nowhere. It's working a job you hate just for the paycheck, when you know it's draining your soul. It's staying in toxic relationships because you're afraid to be alone. It's pretending to be someone you're not, day after day, because you fear rejection more than you value your authenticity. These kinds of struggles feel heavy, exhausting, and stagnant. They don't teach you anything. They don't connect you to your deeper self. They just wear you down. And the tragic thing is, people often choose these struggles because they seem safer. They're familiar, predictable. But that safety comes at the cost of your vitality, your creativity, and your sense of purpose. Frankl believed that responsibility was the gateway to meaning, that to live a meaningful life, you must take responsibility, not just for surviving, but for choosing your response to life's challenges. He called this the last of the human freedoms, the ability to choose your attitude in any given set of circumstances. Even in a concentration camp, stripped of everything, Frankl realized he could still control how he faced his suffering. That choice, how we respond to pain, is what makes us human. And in a world obsessed with avoiding difficulty, that's a radical idea. Most of us go to great lengths to dodge pain. We avoid hard conversations, we put off tough decisions, we distract ourselves from discomfort, but in doing so, we also avoid the very things that give life depth. So what if we flipped the mindset? What if we stopped asking, how can I avoid struggle? And started asking, what struggle is worth it? Instead of chasing comfort, what if we chased meaning? That doesn't mean we should intentionally suffer or seek out hardship for no reason. But it does mean we should stop being afraid of the hard path, especially when that path leads us towards something real. Want to build a creative life? You'll have to face self-doubt, criticism, and the fear of failure. Want to build meaningful relationships? You'll have to face vulnerability, conflict, and emotional honesty. Want to become who you were meant to be? You'll have to face the discomfort of leaving behind who you no longer are. That's not suffering for the sake of suffering. That's growing pains. That's transformation. There's dignity in struggle when it's aligned with your values. There's power in choosing the difficult road if it leads you to something that matters. And when you shift your mindset from avoiding pain to embracing meaningful challenges, everything changes. You start to see obstacles as invitations. You begin to see fear not as a warning sign, but as a signal that you're on the edge of something important. You stop asking, how do I make life easier? And start asking, how do I make it richer? That question leads to a deeper life, one that's not always pleasant, but always real. Too often we confuse pleasure with meaning. We think we'll be happy if we just get rid of all the stress and friction. But a life without friction is also a life without momentum. You can coast for a while, sure, but eventually you'll feel that creeping emptiness. Because deep down, you know you were made for more than comfort. You were made to grow, to serve, to create, to love, and all of those things require effort. They demand something from you, but what they give in return is so much greater than what they take. You don't need to suffer endlessly to live a meaningful life, but you do need to stop running from difficulty. You need to start choosing challenges that matter to you. Start looking at your current struggles. Which of them are building something? Which of them feel like sacrifices you're willing to make? Which of them feel connected to your purpose? And which ones are draining you without giving anything back? Be honest. Then start making changes. Start shifting your energy toward the struggles that move you forward. You don't have to be extraordinary. You just have to be willing. Willing to choose the meaningful fight over the easy exit. Willing to take responsibility when it would be easier to blame. Willing to suffer for the right reasons, because the alternative is to suffer for no reason at all. And that, as Francha teaches us, is the real tragedy. The moment you start taking responsibility for your struggle, it begins to transform. It becomes sacred. It becomes a story you're proud of. It becomes the fire that forges who you are. You stop being a victim of life and start becoming a participant in it. And that's where meaning lives, not in avoiding the storm, but in learning to dance through it with purpose. That's where you reclaim your life, not when it's perfect, but when it's yours. Understanding the crisis of autopilot living and reflecting on your mortality or authenticity is powerful, but it doesn't change your life unless you act. Awareness is the spark, but action is the fire. If you want to snap out of autopilot, you need to do more than just think differently. You need to live differently. And that doesn't mean quitting your job tomorrow or moving to the mountains. It means starting small. It means becoming aware of the moments you're sleepwalking and making small, intentional decisions that slowly pull you back into presence. Big changes are overwhelming, but small steps taken consistently will change the course of your life without you even realizing it at first. One of the simplest and most effective tools for waking up is existential journaling. This isn't about keeping a record of what you ate or what errands you ran. This is about reflecting deeply on the questions that matter. Every morning or night, take 5 to 10 minutes and ask yourself, if today was my last day, what would I want to remember? What would I regret? Did I live in alignment with what I value? These aren't comfortable questions, but they cut through the noise. They force you to look at your actions and ask whether they truly reflect who you are and who you want to be. And over time, this practice will sharpen your awareness like a blade. You'll start noticing when you're acting out of fear or habit, and when you're acting from a place of intention. You'll feel the difference between a day that's truly lived and one that just passes you by. Don't underestimate the power of asking the same question every day. A question like, if today were my last, what would I do differently, has a way of pulling truth out of you. Not all at once, but gradually. The more you answer it, the more honest you become. You start seeing where you're stuck, where you're making excuses, and where you're living someone else's life instead of your own. It might start with small realizations, like how you spend your evenings, who you spend time with, or how you treat your body. But soon, those realizations build up into a deep internal shift. You begin living each day as a choice, not an obligation. Alongside journaling, one of the most immediate ways to disrupt autopilot is through intentional routine disruption. You don't have to change everything at once. In fact, you shouldn't. But you can begin by doing small things differently. Wake up 10 minutes earlier and sit in silence. Take a different route to work. Eat something you've never tried before. Start a conversation with someone you usually ignore. Turn off your phone for an hour and see how it feels. These changes might seem small or even silly, but that's the point. They break the pattern. Autopilot thrives on predictability. The moment you inject something new into your day, your mind wakes up. You become more alert, more engaged. You remember that you have agency, that your life isn't just happening to you, you are participating in it. You can take this even further by practicing what you might call mindful existential reminders. These are moments throughout the day when you pause and remind yourself that you are alive here, now, and that this moment will never come again. You don't need incense or chants or perfect silence. You just need to stop and breathe. Look around. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. Notice the light in the room. Acknowledge the fact that you are a conscious being experiencing this very moment of existence. You can even create little rituals, a deep breath before you open your inbox, a moment of stillness before you speak in a meeting, or a short sentence like, "This is not forever," whispered to yourself when you're frustrated, bored, or tempted to check out mentally. These reminders can be anchors, pulling you back into the present where your real life is happening. Another version of this is meditating on impermanence, not in a dark or heavy way, but in a clear and focused one. Take a few minutes each day to reflect on the fact that everything you're experiencing, this moment, your youth, your relationships, your challenges, is temporary. This isn't meant to scare you, it's meant to heighten your appreciation. When you know that nothing lasts, you stop taking it all for granted. You stop sleepwalking. You realize how precious even the mundane moments are, the way your coffee tastes, the sound of someone's laughter, the feeling of your feet on the ground. You start living with your eyes open, your heart open. The hardest part of all of this isn't starting, it's continuing. It's easy to wake up for a day, a week, maybe even a month, but then life pulls you back. Work piles up, obligations return, the glow of motivation fades. This is why you need to understand one more thing. Meaningful change is slow. It doesn't happen in a single lightning bolt of inspiration. It happens in the accumulation of consistent, small acts. You might not feel different after one journaling session, or one moment of stillness, or one new conversation. But stack those actions day after day, and something deep starts to shift. Your life begins to take a new shape, not because of one dramatic moment, but because of the quiet, repeated decision to live with intention. Patience is not passive. Patience is the discipline to keep showing up, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Think of it like planting seeds. You don't see growth right away, but that doesn't mean it isn't happening. Under the surface, things are changing. Your awareness is expanding. Your choices are getting clearer. Your values are becoming more visible. And one day, without even realizing it, you'll wake up and feel different. Not because your external life has radically changed, but because you're finally in it, fully, presently, courageously. You're no longer a bystander. You're no longer numbed out. You're alive. And maybe that's the real goal, not to fix everything, not to be perfect, but simply to be here, to live a life you're awake for. That's what snapping out of autopilot really means. Not that you never fall back asleep, but that you keep choosing to wake up every day, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when you're tired. You choose to show up for your life because it's the only one you get. And it deserves more than your automatic responses. It deserves your attention, your presence, your love. So start today. Write one honest sentence in a journal. Do one thing differently. Take one deep breath and feel what it means to be alive in this exact second. That's all it takes to begin. And once you begin, keep going, slowly, gently, but consistently. That's how you build a life worth living, not all at once, but one conscious moment at a time. there's one truth that sits quietly beneath everything we've explored in this video. Life is short, shorter than we think, shorter than we want it to be. And the most painful thing about that truth isn't death itself, it's how easily we forget it. We spend so much time distracted, anxious, waiting for the right moment to speak up, waiting for the perfect conditions to chase our dreams, waiting for clarity, confidence, permission. But the right moment never comes, not the way we imagine it. Life doesn't hand us a sign. It doesn't pause for us to catch up. It just moves, relentlessly, unapologetically. So if you're waiting for the right time, I'll tell you now, it doesn't exist. The only moment you have is the one in front of you right now, and if you don't use it, you'll lose it. This moment, this very second as you sit here listening, is the only thing that's real. The past is gone, the future is uncertain, but this right here is yours. The breath in your lungs, the thoughts in your head, the beating of your heart, that's your life. And it's happening whether you show up for it or not. So what will you do with it? Will you drift through it hoping things change on their own, or will you meet it head on with open eyes and a willing heart? Because no one else is coming to save you. No one is going to live your life for you, and no one can give you meaning. It's yours to create. That's not a burden. That's the greatest kind of freedom. This is the core of existentialism. Not despair, not hopelessness, but radical ownership. It says, yes, life is uncertain. Yes, death is inevitable. Yes, suffering is part of the deal. But so what? You're still here. You're still breathing. You still get to choose what your life means. And that choice, that tiny space between what happens and how you respond, is where all your power lives. Viktor Frankl knew this in the darkest of circumstances. Nietzsche shouted it through fire and fury. Kierkegaard wrestled with it in silence and solitude. Sartre lived it with relentless intensity. And Camus, despite all the absurdity, still chose rebellion, still chose to live. This isn't abstract theory. It's a way of being. It means choosing to live on purpose, even when the world tries to pull you into the comfort of autopilot. It means choosing truth, even when lies would be easier. It means choosing effort, even when laziness is more tempting. And it means choosing to love yourself, others, this strange, beautiful, terrifying life, even when it's messy, uncertain, and imperfect. Existentialism doesn't promise ease, it promises responsibility. But with that responsibility comes power. You don't have to be the victim of your past. You don't have to follow the path you didn't choose. You can rewrite your story. You can begin again today, now, right here. The world will try to convince you that you're small, that you should stay quiet, follow the rules, play it safe. But the truth is, you're more powerful than you think. Not because you can control everything, because you can't, but because you can choose how you meet what life gives you. You can choose to suffer for something meaningful. You can choose to stand apart from the crowd and live authentically. You can choose to take responsibility for your own becoming every single day. That's courage, existential courage. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. To show up fully, despite the uncertainty. To live deliberately in a world that would rather you remain asleep. So let this be your wake-up call. Let this be the moment you decide that your life matters too much to be lived passively, that you're no longer willing to let the days blur together, that you're done waiting. Waiting for confidence, waiting for motivation, waiting for the perfect time. The perfect time is a myth. All you have is now. All you've ever had is now. And the sooner you start treating this moment like the miracle it is, the sooner you'll start living the life you were meant to live. Not someday, not when it's easy, now. Start by making one decision today that reflects who you really are. Say the thing you've been afraid to say. Take the first step toward that dream you've buried. Stop apologizing for wanting more. Stop minimizing your pain. Stop hiding your truth. Start showing up, not as who you think you should be, but as who you are. And keep showing up, even when you stumble, even when no one else understands, even when it's hard. because that's what living deliberately means. It's not glamorous, it's not always inspiring, but it's real, it's raw, it's yours. There's a line by Albert Camus that captures everything we've talked about in a single breath. He said, "In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer." That line isn't just poetry, it's a truth buried deep inside all of us. No matter how numb you felt, no matter how lost, how small, how disconnected, you still have that summer inside you. You still have light, you still have strength, you still have the ability to choose, to rise, to begin again. So don't waste another day. Don't waste another breath pretending this isn't your one and only life. It is. And it's too precious, too wild, too fleeting to be lived halfway. Wake up, choose your life consciously, live deliberately. Let that be your rebellion. Let that be your legacy. Let that be your freedom.